Every morning I wake up and see the splendor of Allah's beauty. The sky at dawn, the silent trees. Praise be to Him, supreme is He. Praise be to Him, supreme is He. As I set to start my day, I think of Allah and I pray His blessings are with me.
الله الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبع سنته إلى يوم الدين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome again to another episode of Think About It. Now, we're going to have in today's episode, we're going to clear up some of the common misconceptions that people have about Islam by reading some very interesting information and clearing those doubts. Now, the first one we want to talk about is this issue of terrorism, that Muslims are violent, Muslims are terrorists, Muslims are extremists. And the reality is this is the biggest misconception in Islam. And obviously, no doubt, this is resulting from the constant stereotyping, the bashing that the media gives Islam. And we see when a gunman attacks a mosque in the name of Judaism, or a Catholic IRA guerrilla sets off a bomb in an urban area, or a Serbian Orthodox militiaman rape and kill innocent Muslim civilians. These acts, they're not used to stereotype the entire faith. And as a matter of fact, never do we see these acts attributed to the religion of the perpetrators. Yet how many times do we hear the words Islamic Muslim fundamentalists linked with violence? And this is, and the guy just happens to be a Muslim. Sometimes it may have nothing to do with Islam, or that he may not even be doing it in the name of Islam, but it automatically gets that label. Even politics, we see in Islam in certain countries. This is not. We should ignore these kind of things, and one should remember that to go to the source of Islam and separate what the true religion of Islam says from what is portrayed in the media. Islam, as we know, literally means submission to God, and it comes from the root word meaning peace. And Islam may seem exotic, for lack of better words, or extreme in the modern world, and perhaps it's because religion does not dominate everyday life in the West, whereas Islam is considered a way of life for Muslims. And we make no division between secular and sacred in our lives. Like Christianity, Islam permits fighting and self-defense, in defense of religion, or on the part of those who have been expelled forcibly from their homes. And Islam lays down very strict rules of combat, where prohibitions against harming civilians and against destroying crops, trees and livestock. Nowhere does Islam ever enjoin the killing of innocents. And the Prophet Muhammad, like I mentioned, he said, if you're at a time of war, do not kill women, do not kill children, do not kill old people, only kill those who are actually fighting you on the battlefield. Do not even destroy crops and trees and livestock. And in the Quran, it says, fight in the cause of Allah against those who fight you, but do not transgress limits. Allah does not love transgressors. Also, it says, if they seek peace, then seek you peace, and trust in Allah, for He is the all-hearer, the all-knower. So this war, this war is a last resort, and is subject to very rigorous and certain conditions laid down by the sacred law, the Sharia law. And the term jihad, this literally means to struggle. It doesn't mean a holy war. There's no such thing in Islam as holy war. There was a struggle. And we believe there are two kinds of jihad, two kinds of this struggle. The jihad of the inner struggle of oneself, which everyone does. Everyone is always fighting against themselves. And this is, one of the hardest jihads is hardest struggles is fighting yourself against the desires. And many people often quote a verse in the Quran where it says, and strive with, وَجَاهِدْ بِهِمْ جِهَادًا كَبِيرًا, strive with them the biggest jihad. But this verse, from the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, they all agreed that this verse is referring to the big struggle here, the big striving, the big jihad here, is talking about the preaching of the Quran, calling the people, because the people will mock you, the people may beat you, the people may spit at you. This is a very big struggle. It wasn't, and that's what people. But they like to misquote those verses and say that this is promoting. This is what Islam is promoting. The second misconception is Islam oppresses women. And we mentioned this, but I want to give a recap and slightly different information. I mean, the image of the typical Muslim woman wearing the veil, forced to stay at home, forbidden to drive, this is all common in most people's thoughts. Although some Muslim countries may have laws that may oppress women, or may seem to oppress women, this should not be seen as coming from Islam. Many of these countries are not doing it because it's from the Sharia law, and they introduce their own cultural standpoints on the issue of gender equity or equality. But Islam, on the other hand, gives men and women different roles, and equity between the two is laid down in the Noble Quran. And the example of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, as we mentioned in our previous episodes, Islam sees a woman, whether single or married, as an individual in her own right, with her right to own and dispose of her property and earnings. A marriage gift is given by the groom to the bride for her own personal use. She keeps her own family name. Both men and women are expected to dress in a way which is modest and dignified, which you mentioned in detail. And the Messenger of Allah, peace be upon him, said, "The most perfect in faith amongst believers is he who is best in manners and kindness to his wife." Violence of any kind towards women and forcing them against their will for anything is not allowed. A Muslim marriage is a simple, legal agreement in which either partner is free to include conditions. Marriage customs vary widely from country to country, and divorce is not very common like we see other places, although it is acceptable as a last resort. According to Islam, a Muslim girl cannot be forced to marry against her will. Her parents simply suggest young men that they think may be suitable. Misconception number 3, all Muslim men marry 4 wives. The truth. The religion of Islam was revealed for all societies, all times, so it accommodates widely differing social requirements. Circumstances may warrant the taking of another wife, but the right is granted. According to the Noble Quran, only on the condition that the husband is scrupulously fair. No woman can be forced into this kind of marriage if they don't want to. No woman can be forced into this kind of marriage at all. And again, Islam allows this for various reasons. One, the man in his nature is more posed to wanted more than one woman. And we see so many stories of apparently the most noble of people, the most highest of society, having regular affairs or renting women for the same purposes and this kind of thing. But Islam says if the man has those urges and he's able to provide fairly, this one has a house, this one has a house, whatever he provides for this one, he provides for that one, then allows them. Rather, Islam actually limited it. Before it was so much more than this. And they've done studies in society, and they went to people in the West, and they said, "We'll keep you anonymous. We're doing a survey," and they asked men and women, if you had the chance, would you, if you couldn't get caught and nobody would find out, would you cheat on your partner or your husband or your wife? Around 84% of the men from all walks of life said yes, we would. And only around 14 or 15% of women said they would. So this is the reality. So Allah, being the one who created us and knows what the man is like and what the woman is like, allowed the man to do so. But it's not something that should be done willy-nilly. And if the man knows that it will cause more harm and destruction to his first relationship, then it's better for him to avoid doing it. And that is one of the misconceptions that people often have. Another misconception, or we hear, is that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, they like to say that he was, I don't like to say this, but they like to say that he was a paedophile. And it's a very horrible thing for me to even say such a thing about such a man. But this is what people say. First of all, we know that paedophiles, they don't marry. They play with one child and they move on to another child, and they purposely choose children who have not reached puberty. Now the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, according to the majority, married on paperwork Aisha when she was 6. When she became 9, she reached puberty. And then he married her, which is a very common thing in those day and age. I personally know somebody here from Dubai whose mother was 10, 11 when she got married and the father was 15. This was very widespread, and that was only 50, 60 years ago. So 1,400 years ago, in the hot climates as well, the climates, girls reach puberty a lot quicker. And if you even look into the history of Europe, even until recent times, you'll find that many of the people, of the kings and of the noble men, would marry girls of 11, 12 and 13. There are many examples that you can find throughout history of them doing so. And even if you go across Europe, what is the legal age to marry or have sexual relations with a young person? It varies. Some say 13, some say 14, some say 15. There's nothing that is clearly legislated apart from Islam. Islam says puberty. Islam says puberty. Islam is the only one that actually gives a clear guideline from the aspect of religion. And you'll find that even until now, in some states, there are states in America, there's a state in America that allows a full-grown man to marry a 12-year-old. It's legally okay for a man to marry a 12-year-old as long as the parents agree. So where do we bear the line? The Prophet Muhammad actually did not even marry until he was, he married, his first wife he married was older than him by 20 years. She was older than him by 20 years. Even after he married Aisha, he married divorcees and widows as his other wives. So he wasn't. There's no stories of him kept on marrying lots of young girls or anything like this. And as we've established, Aisha was in puberty. So this is one of those misconceptions that people like to throw out there to try and dirty the name of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And these are the kind of misconceptions that people have, or people are fed by being given distorted stories, by being given incorrect information, or the information has been changed, or has sometimes been completely made up. And the reality, when we look at it, as we've seen today, is far from what they say. It's very far from the kind of ideas they like to put in people's minds about the treatment of women. And we covered that in the whole episode. About the fact that, as I just mentioned, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, young marriage. All of this is what they try to keep on mentioning over and over again to try and, like we mentioned, we know recently that there was a scenario where in Norway, the man who clearly said he's doing it for Christian white supremacy, and he was purposely going to this in Norway. We all know he killed about 70 people. He clearly said that he was doing it in the name of Christianity, and that he was going there because this political party who was holding this summer camp for the teenagers, that they had agreed to some agreements with Muslims and allowing refugees, etc. So he purposely went there and did this to protest against Islam. But he was never called a terrorist. He was called mentally insane. So, sometimes people choose the words, and this obviously adds to the bad reputation of, to Islam having a bad reputation. But I always say, when people know that something's right, they always try to dirty the name to take people away from it. And we've come to the end of this episode. So until you join me next time here on Think About It, I leave you with the greetings of Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Every morning I wake up and see the splendor of Allah's beauty. The sky adorned, the silent trees. Praise be to Him, supreme is He. Praise be to Him, supreme is He. As I set to start my day, I think of Allah and I pray. His blessings are with me always. Praise be to Him, most kind is He. Praise be to Him, most kind is He. Every morning I wake up and see the splendor of Allah's beauty. The sky adorned, the silent trees. Praise be to His supremacy.